Any questions?
Okay, ladies first.
You keep mentioning the number, you keep asking how many killed, how many killed. Why does it matter how many were killed? One person being killed still means a rocket was fired. Why does that justify, just because no one was killed or even one person was killed, why does that justify it happening? Rather than hundreds?
We've got more than 1 million and now 500,000 living in the Gaza Strip. We've been bombed by all kinds of weapons you can imagine.
Yeah, but you were saying, when they...
I understand, but the thing in the Israeli side, they are enlarging things. They are making a huge propaganda. I know every person, killing one person as killing a million person. I agree with this, okay? I've got many close friends who were killed. I've got many relatives who were killed in that war.
Can I come back and maybe something else to the question? You know, there's a term called self-defense, as you know. If I come up to you and slap your face, which I won't do, I promise. Not going to the wall saying. But if I did, are you entitled to take a gun out and put a bullet through my head? And then put a bullet through my child's head? And then put a bullet through my wife's head? That is the difference between the mortars, and they're not so-called mortars, I'm not going to use that term. The mortars that are going over randomly, they're not sophisticated weapons. Some of them are hitting the targets. It is totally wrong that it is happening. It should not happen. The bomb that went up in Jerusalem should not happen. I abhor all violence on all sides. It shouldn't happen. But to respond in it, in the way that they are responding, is wholly unreasonable, wholly disproportionate, and is killing a lot of innocent people.
Thank you very much. Yes, Pat. Okay, gentlemen first.
Yes. First of all, Hamas established democratic electric. So Israel went to war with a democratic electric government. I'll come back to the latter point. Secondly, how would you justify Israeli ultra-Orthodox Jewish settlements inside the occupied territories of the West Bank?
Firstly, your question on the Hamas. Oh, look, this is worth focusing on for a second because Muslim Brotherhood, obviously, which Hamas is a wing, have big intentions in the region. So it's worth looking at what they have done so far, where they have got power. We may have a different standard of what constitutes a legitimate democratic government. I don't think that seizing power after an election in a coup where you kill your political opponents, murder them, and then never have another election is a democracy. I just don't think it is. Don't think it counts. One vote once doesn't count in my mind. The Hamas are, I have to say this, the biggest stumbling block of peace between the two parties. Because there are now three parties, and you have the possibility of a three-state solution, which I think is a very unhappy result, where you have the Palestinian Authority governing the West Bank, the State of Israel, and then a Hamas state in the Gaza. I think that's a very bad outcome. I think it's principally a terrible outcome for the people, the Palestinian people. I think secondarily it's a terrible outcome for Israel because it doesn't have a negotiating partner in that part of the world. On the settlements issue, look, there's a lot of difference of opinion on this, but I'll express mine. I don't want any more settlements. I think that they should roll back a number, quite a lot. I think that the final settlement between Israel and the Palestinian peoples in the West Bank will not be the 1967 borders. I think it will be something which allows some settlements to remain, some of the large ones. There will be a compromise on others. Effectively, most people know this is the future of it. There's the people who dream of 67 borders and things. It's not going to happen. But there is an additional thing on it which is worth mentioning. The gentleman referred to it in the question earlier. We should ask ourselves why it is that it is pretty much being decided by the outside world that if the Palestinian state does come into existence, as we hope it does, in the West Bank, that it will be free of Jews. This is a serious question we have to ask ourselves, to ask the region. Why is it that an Israeli family couldn't continue to live in their house in a Palestinian-run state? And when you consider that, you get to the root of part of this problem.
I would just like to point out the democratic nature of Hamas, which is so often propagated as a means to apologise for their actions. If 51% of this room voted to exterminate the other 49%, I would not consider that decision legitimate. I would not consider the reason to talk to 51% and hope to pursue a peaceful resolution for anything. The point is, democracy is about accountability, it's about liberalism, it's about freedom. As Mr. Murray pointed out, Hamas murdered its political opponents as soon as it seized power in Gaza. It has continued to intimidate people who don't fall in line with its ideology since, and it tortures and murders its own citizens regularly. It also places them in grave danger by firing from schools, mosques, hospitals, as we've discussed. There can be no doubt about this. The idea of democracy in Gaza is ludicrous, and it's very problematic to continue referring to it. In order to have peace, there has to be freedom in Gaza.
Okay, we're now going to move on to the third discussion topic, and I'd like to tell the speakers, if anyone does go over 3 minutes this time, I will bash the gavel because we're running quite short on time.
Yes, so we'll now address the final topic, and later on, as I've seen, there are a lot of people willing to raise the question, so you had a chance. For now, just hold on a little bit. So the final question would be for both of the panelists. How do you believe the conflict could be solved politically, in terms of political implications? And I would like just to remind you to keep your statements as brief as possible. So I would direct this question first of all to Mr. Murray.
Thank you. Look, my observation would be the following. Anyone who says to you this is simple is a liar. It's not going to be simple, but it is achievable. And I would put it in the following way. In our lifetime, we will be able to see, perhaps even in the next 10 years, we'll be able to see what I think the us in the panel are united in wanting, which is, as I say, the creation of a legitimate Palestinian state. Now, most, I think, if not all, there are some. I agree. Every single democracy, there's some whack jobs. No doubt about it. You can always find one in America, you can always find one in Britain, you can always find one in Israel. But most of the mainstream, the whole of the mainstream of Israeli politics recognizes that at some point in the near future, a Palestinian state has to be encouraged and allowed to go ahead. Now, the problem for Israel, the problem for peace, is the following. They have a serious problem with finding a legitimate negotiating partner. And since the so-called election of Hamas, this has become a lot harder. Hamas, nobody's mentioned it yet, but it should be mentioned. Hamas, in its founding charter, is dedicated to the annihilation of the Jewish state. It is very, very hard to talk niceties with people who want to annihilate you. Very, very hard. Very hard to talk particular border issues or taxation issues or local council business if somebody's big picture desire is the annihilation of your peoples. So, there is a big obstacle to peace. A very big obstacle. And it is the fact that a very large number of Palestinians and a certain proportion of their leadership, most obviously the Hamas, cannot allow this Palestinian state to go ahead because they have to allow the Jewish state to exist alongside it. And they cannot make that leap. It is a tragedy. I have to tell you, it is a tragedy because what is possible is so within reach. But as long as the Palestinians have Hamas, a terrorist organization, claiming to represent a group of people, the Israelis can never sit down with them. And so, as I say, the will, I believe, on Israel's side is there. And they pretty much know what the final resolution of this conflict would look like. But we have to ask whether the same willingness sits on the side of the Palestinians. And I think the answer there is far more troubling.
Mr. MacDonald, what would be your observations?
I agree with one thing, it is complex. I think there won't be any peace in the Middle East until we get a very strong president of the United States of America. I think it starts there, and it starts with pressure having to be put upon Israel to sit at a table and to be reasonable with its negotiations. the parliamentary and government coalition in Israel is dominated by Orthodox Jews who don't believe that Palestine has a right to exist. As a result of that, that's why most of the settlements are now full of Orthodox Jews who want to take over the land because they believe that it's their God-given right to have that land. And that is the main stumbling block. It is an election system of proportional representation. Can I just say on the side here, vote against AV, whatever you do. It is a coalition system dominated by Orthodox Jews who don't agree with the right of Palestine to exist, dictating the policy of a right-wing government. That is what we need to solve first. The way to do it is by having a strong president of the United States who has a cash pot of £3.5 billion and says, until you start sitting at a table, and this is what President Bush wanted, funny enough.
He did it with Shamir as well.
Yeah. He said, we won't give you any money. Sit at that table and start talking. And don't start talking in fantasy land. Start talking about real possibilities. That is the way forward. So, then I think we have to dismantle many of the settlements. The rest of the settlements that will stay will be under the Palestinian Authority. Golan Heights needs to go back to Syria. Absolutely. The wall needs to be torn down. An airport needs to go back into West Bank, into Gaza as well. That needs to go back. And we need to have the Palestinians being treated with a little bit more dignity. You know, when I left Palestine, I had to go. The only way into Palestine, proper way into Palestine, is through Ben Gurion Airport, just outside Tel Aviv. And I was there with my girlfriend who had come over to be with me, and we've got a really hard time because they asked the question, have you been to the West Bank? And of course I couldn't lie. And I said, well, yes. And they said, right. So they searched it all thoroughly, went from every single piece of item. And this immigration official held up this book and she said, what's this? I said, it's a tour guide of Palestine. It's a rough guide of Palestine. And I said, look, I've got one here. It's a rough guide of Israel. She said, but I don't understand what this is. I said, it's a rough guide of Palestine. It's a tour guide of Palestine. He said, well, how can you have a tour guide of Palestine when Palestine doesn't exist? And I knew then that I'd lost the argument. Now, I'm not saying that every Israeli is like that. Of course they're not. But there is a predominant part of the Israeli establishment, and yes, the Israeli army, that doesn't believe that Palestinians have a right to be in their own land. We have to change that. The way to change it is by having a strong America and a strong American president.
Mr. Westbrook, what would be your views on the topic?
Well, firstly, I very quickly have to refute the idea that Israeli society does not wish for a settlement and a two-state solution. It is the prevailing opinion of Israeli society and Israeli politics. I also found the slur about Orthodox Jews all desiring the Palestine never to exist in some expanded jurisdiction to be deeply offensive. I'm an Orthodox Jew myself, but I know many Orthodox Jews, many of which I'm involved with, who campaign quite regularly for a peaceful two-state solution. I'm not sure if it's just informed or misunderstanding, but either way it's wrong. How peace will come about? We have a perfect model in the form of Egypt. Egypt decided to stop wanting to destroy Israel. The settlements in the Sinai were consequently taken down, and there has been peace ever since, and collaboration. And now that Mubarak's gone, if we do go towards a liberal democracy, I expect that peace to hold and, if anything, strengthen. And it is this desire for peace that can only lie, the settlement can only lie when the person who wants to destroy something stops wanting to destroy. There are several examples of how they can do this. Firstly, in the Palestinian Authority, I mean, Hamas, I've gone over. They need to be destroyed. They wish to annihilate Israel. There is no dealing with these people. The PA are different people. There has been tremendous economic growth over the last few years. We've had in the West Bank, 30%, one of the highest in the world. As a result, checkpoints have gone down, things have got easier to allow goods to move, greater trade between Israel and the West Bank. It's very successful. The abandoning your call for violence, discouraging, making the Palestinian security forces work to a greater efficacy against terror groups in the West Bank leads to better situation for both Israelis and Palestinians. There's one thing the PA is still doing, and that's incitement. This is a huge problem, especially for Palestinian schoolchildren, who from a young age are taught that the protocols of the Elders of Zion, a document purporting to be written by Jews to decide world domination, is a legitimate document. They are taught that Jews are pigs and that Christians are apes. Incitement has to stop. This is ultimately necessary. The Golan Heights mentioned is bizarre. Before Israel captured the Golan in 40 years ago, the everyday farmers down in the Galilee and the valleys would be shot by Syrian snipers. They would be murdered. The idea that you would give back this crucial military asset to a side which is not only has killed your people in the past and shown no discrepancy about killing civilians, but has promised to do so in the future is insanity. The war, the so-called apartheid war, as it's referred to, has said suicide bombings. This was the first in years. You know, the suicides today was shocking. I said first in years. Suicide bombings have gone down, I believe, over 92% since the war was created. To quabble over a few metres of land when you are saving so many lives on both sides as peace concerning the West Bank as well is extraordinary. It's something you can't argue is not useful. Finally, I'd like to draw attention to the treatment of Palestinians in Arab lands. I believe this is a genuine obstacle to peace. In Israel, we have there are Arabs in the Supreme Court, there are Arab judges elsewhere, there are Arabs in the military, very high in the command, there are Arab politicians, there have been Arabs in the cabinet, there's been an Arab Miss Israel, the Eurovision contest, with an Arab represented Israel. It's an extraordinary thing. In Lebanon, they're denied access to all forms of healthcare, education, they're not allowed to work in certain jobs, they're kept in refugee camps. I think if the Arabs really wanted the Palestinian success, they would have to demonstrate that the treatment of them in their own countries is somewhat different. I don't believe until the Arabs actually want peace, the Arab states, the Arab dictators show that they want peace, that anything can possibly happen.
What will be your closing remarks?
Well, I just need some time, as the other has. I'd like to say that it's within this short debate, it was the hardest for me to debate Mr. Murray, but it was the easiest to debunk in terms of the allegations and the lies he said within all this debate. He was speaking about Hamas and having no partner, but he should go back some years back, when Hamas was not in the power, when Yasser Arafat was negotiating with you, when Abu Mazen was negotiating with you in an Annapolis agreement, and you have fled from that. You didn't speak about Oslo Accords and about Netanyahu when he came after Rabin was killed, after Beres, and he didn't do anything. He didn't pull out from many cities he was due to do. Hamas was not there. Why you didn't make peace? That's a simple question. Because simply, Israel is not interested in peace. Having lived in the Middle East, having experienced all these traumas, me, my family, and everyone around me, I don't think that would be a very close solution. I'm very pessimistic about that. Israel is neither interested in a one-state solution, because this would bring it down. The demographic balance would go for the Palestinians. Israel would never accept this. About two-state solution, it would never be implemented, because Israelis have stolen all the land in the West Bank. There is nothing to negotiate about even. The solution that maybe, jokingly, that would be accepted by Mr. Murray, and he's working, as you know, for the Cohesion Center for this integration. I call it integration. He might accept to bring some more, let's say, 7 million Muslims, Palestinians, bring those in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank, those in the refugee camps, bring them here in Britain, and through his center, he will have some very creative and philosophical ideas to deal with. Because I see, practically speaking, Israel is not interested. Anyway, those people should be consulted. They should go back if they want, or they should be compensated if they want. seeing all this peace process and all these rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds of negotiations, I could clearly tell you that Israel are not interested in peace. If they are interested in peace again, why they didn't make it with Arafat? Why they didn't make it with Bashar al-Assad, for example? There's no Hamas in Syria. Why they didn't give up the Golan Heights for Syria? This shows that Israel is not interested in peace with any party. Israel knows that peace means we have to give up lands, and Israel is not ready to give up lands. And that's it. Thanks.
I'm so sorry to be very, very quick. The Oslo Accords. If you would like to come back, I'll cede my time. Just very quickly, the Oslo Accords didn't happen that way. At Oslo, Arafat, who had been a terrorist, who had been trying to annihilate, after all, the Jewish state for his whole adult life, Arafat was offered things that I think now are not going to be on the table, sadly. But at Oslo, he was offered, among other things, he was offered 98% of what he wanted. And among other things, he was offered a division of Jerusalem, which I think is not a desirable thing. But he was offered all of this. What did Arafat do? He did what Arafat always did. He walked away. He missed the opportunity. This is a total misreading of history. And as for this issue of expulsion, which state in the world in recent decades has been the one who's expelled most Palestinians? Anyone know? Kuwait. After the 1990 invasion by Iraq, there was only one authority government in the world stupid enough to back Saddam Hussein, and that was, of course, Yasser Arafat, who never missed an opportunity to miss an opportunity. And as a result, when the Kuwaiti government got its state back, it expelled every Palestinian from Kuwaiti territory. Now, pardon me, but if we're hearing 6 decades on all of this stuff about the right to return to people in the 1940s, why not them? There's a reason. Because when Israel does it, it interests certain people.
As I earlier said, it was the hardest to debate, but again the easiest to debunk. He just told us some mistakes when he said that in Oslo agreement there were 99% of the land were offered to Arafat. That's a lie, man. Could you tell them what happened? This was not happened in Oslo. This happened, according to the Israelis, in Camp David when Barack and Clinton were in the office. So you've told us a mistake. This shows us that we should not believe in your view and what you say, because you tell us mistakes, man.
Okay, has anyone from the floor got any questions? Okay.
I've been waiting for that 5 minutes.
Any there? Yes, you.
Okay, well, you both mentioned the position of Orthodox Jews in the question, which I think is quite interesting, given that we're analyzing quite extreme case. Well, you mentioned, some of you mentioned that Orthodox Jews are not supportive of Israel, of Palestine.
Can I just clarify to speak that we're talking about political objectives, not religious objectives? So this, if this
Well,
could be
they have political
religious,
objectives.
if this gave you a religious question,
Yeah. Well, I also have to tell you that some Orthodox Jews, there are different views. You know, argue that Israel should be dismantled. That the land should be given to Palestinians. So I should tell you that there are different views in amongst Orthodox Jews. So you cannot just generalize and say that Orthodox Jews are for the preservation of the state of Israel. That is.
Can I come back on
Which were the question directed towards which side?
Well, I was questioning.
Okay, so yes.
I was actually, I agree, I was refuting the generalisation.
Yeah, that's
I'm
fine.
saying that not all Orthodox. I understand it could have been speaking, but I don't know. The point is that there is a great deal of diversity in the society, and that the majority of Orthodox Jews do not want to destroy any hopes or dreams of a Palestinian state. The majority of the ultra-Orthodox are slightly different question. There are different, again, balances. In terms of ultra-Orthodox Jews against Israel, anti-Zionist Jews, the tiny segment of Jews, Carter, who are despicable people. They, of course, went to Ahmadinejad's Holocaust denial conference, and only 5-6 weeks ago, the head, Aaron Cohen, here in the UK, was due to speak at the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, the LSE. And I think this sums up the emotive, visceral rhetoric and nature by which the PSA pursue their objectives. Aaron Cohen is not a Holocaust denier. He believes the Holocaust victims deserved it. And this is the kind of people we're dealing with. So I don't care what.
Okay, can we move on? Can we move on?
If this debate is not going to be chaired properly, I'm just going to just talk over.
If you want to undermine the chair,
Okay.
you can leave, but please try and stick to the running, and we're going to let everyone try and speak appropriately and in turn,
That's fine.
and make sure it's fair and balanced. So please,
one
go ahead.
of my concerns, and my concern this morning, is the ranting and the raving that we sometimes get from Douglas Murray. He's proud of it, and he does it often, particularly on Question Time or Newsnight.
Can we please just cut out the personal song that's going on? The debate is about Israel and whether it's
Let me finish. I think it's quite important that we talk about the issue, and you raise the issue in relation to the Orthodox Jews. You know, anyone who saw the Louis Theroux programme in relation to settlements and read into the settled land and talking, I don't think many of you saw it here, will see some of the outrageous comments and views that were taken part with those who are living on settlements. And there are now many thousands that are living there. And they have a political party, and it is the politics that I'm talking about. They have a political party. Those are the people that I have concerns with. Let's not try, and I think it may have been a misunderstanding of what I was saying. I certainly wasn't casting all the light on all the Jews. But there are a particular right-wing, ultra-Orthodox, Jewish orthodoxy that does not believe in the right of Palestine to exist. And they do have a very strong dominant power within the coalition government. That's what I was talking about.
Okay, thank you. We're now going to move on to the ending speeches of all of the speakers, and then we'll have more, and then we'll open the discussion to the floor. So we're going to go in reverse order from the opening speeches. The first speaker is going to be Mr. Sameh-Habeeb, please. Thank you.
As you know, we've been debating here for almost, more than an hour. You've seen what the other friends here have said.